you've seen this button calendar and you want to learn how to make it at home, I'm making a little tutorial, so feel free to follow along. This is one flat piece of fabric for the front of the calendar and then the January part, and then here is another flat piece, and now I'm going to make the March piece. I am using muslin fabric. It's one of the cheapest things you can find in the fabric store, but you can also use anything that you find. So what I'm doing right now is laying it down, and then I'm going to trace this shape out, leaving a little bit of extra so that I can sew it and fold it over. The dimensions of the calendar are 20 centimeters wide and 31 or 32 centimeters tall. Once you have a rectangle drawn out, I'm going to measure 1 centimeter out and draw a new line, and that's the line that I'm going to cut. Now that I have everything marked, I'm going to go ahead and cut out on the second outer line, and also I am using a heat erasable fabric pen so that these markings will not be there when I'm done. Okay, now that I have this all cut out, you can see that it's just a bit bigger than the calendar, and that's because we're going to sew the edges down. And I'm going to switch my thread out on my machine to a green thread so that this blue and this pink is green for March. Another thing that's helpful is you can use an iron or you can press these seams down with your fingers just to kind of make it a little bit easier to sew that all down. Alright, I just put green thread in the machine, and I also did want to note that if you don't want to do this with a machine or you don't have one, you could do it by hand sewing. It will just take a bit longer. You could also use fabric glue, super glue, or crazy glue or anything like that. As you sew, I'm sewing pretty close to the edge, like an 1/8 of a centimeter away from the edge. I would recommend getting as close to the edge as you can if you want a nice finish. It should look something like this, and you can go ahead and trim those extra threads. I don't have like a perfectly straight line, so if you want it perfectly straight, I would recommend drawing a straight line as a guide. All right, now I'm gonna go ahead and line this up. And once you have that laid out, you're gonna wanna find a halfway point. All right, so I have this marked kind of as the general part where this is the calendar portion of it. All right, so I just drew out how the outside of the grid wants to go, and then I'm gonna calculate where I need to do my lines, and then I'll update you. So because March has more days than February, I need to make 5 rows instead of 4. And so this is measuring at 10 centimeters. So I'm going to do a line at 2 centimeters each, but depending on how big, if you want to make yours bigger, you can just calculate it based on that. So my top is measuring 17.5 centimeters, and because there's 7 days in a week, I'm going to divide that by 7. So that means I'm going to mark 2.5 centimeters down this line, and then I'll be able to draw the grid. I did also go ahead and mark on the other side, so I have a point to connect them to. All right, now you can kind of see it's starting to come together more as a calendar. So I'm going to sew on these lines to create the grid, but if you don't want to do that, you could totally draw these lines with a fabric pen. All right, so I just finished sewing that grid down. I'm going to go ahead and trim off all these edges, and then I'm going to use my hairdryer to get these lines off, and then I'll show you how it looks. I forgot to mention this too, but don't forget to do a back stitch on the beginning and the end of each of your lines or it will unravel. All right, I just got those markings off, so it should look something like this. And now for the more fun part. Right, so this part you can get creative with and do whatever style you'd like. This is how I'm choosing to do March, and I'm going to use these fabric markers to color them in. And I did just do a little test on this scrap piece of fabric just because once you draw it on there, you can't erase it. All right, this is how I finished it. I personally went with something a bit simple, but you can go as crazy as you'd like for this part. Now the final step is attaching this to the calendar itself. So if you were doing January and this was the front of the calendar 2025, or this is how you do it for all of the following months, you're going to add the top part flat to the back of this, and you're only going to stitch along this part, leaving this open so that you can attach next month here. I am going to switch my thread to a color that matches this muslin a bit better, but you don't have to do that. I just went ahead and did 2 little marks of where I have to stop sewing so that it is able to open as a calendar. Because February isn't done yet, I actually can't sew this down though, so I'm going to pin it and show you what it would look like. I just went ahead and pinned down on the top edges here, and this is how it would look like with February to then March. And here you can see in the January one, I don't know if you can see that lighter color, but I just tried not to cover the blue stitch to close that off. The front, January, February, and soon we'll have March. I hope you enjoyed and I hope you found this helpful. Please ask any questions in the comments if this did not make sense to you. I also did just want to say thank you guys so much for all the support and the love on this button calendar. It's been super fun for me and I'm super glad that you guys have been loving watching the process as well. If you do choose to make one of these, please tag me. I'd love to see it. Thank you guys so much. Have a good day.